Do you understand?
Yes. Yes.
I am going to enter the hottest sorority house of UCSB.
I have court-appointed counsel.
Hello all, and welcome back to Mind Juice. Over the past few days, as I'm continuing to learn more information and pondering it, I have felt my perceptions in regards to the case having evolved a tad bit. So I figured, why not share? Now this episode is going to be a banger. Definitely get those mind juices flowing. The chief focus behind this channel, provoking thought and progressing logical discussion. Number 1, is Bryan a serial killer? Is there evidence he is connected? I will cover that and let you decide for yourself. And number 2, was the fraternity/sorority aspect of this case actually intentional? That is, was it a part of Bryan's plan? This is good. But first, what if any evidence is there to support plausible connections to Bryan as having done this before? Well, that's what I wanted to find out. So I dug a little bit. Hear me out, then you can decide for yourself. Is Bryan Kohberger a serial killer? Are these eerily similar unsolved knife and or stabbing cases related or connected back to him? That is, did he venture to Oregon to first kill a vulnerable elderly woman at the age of 71, then decide to up the ante, becoming riskier, to then attack a 26-year-old couple, Travis and his wife Jamilyn Juetten, both 26 years of age, whom by miracle managed to survive despite being knifed 19 times during the brutal assault, the wife that is. These are the two most discussed cases within the context of potentially also being Bryan, I presume, given the type of attack, what time, weapon, injuries, etc. Further, I also wanted to comment on a few other cases that have been associated and or amongst discussion as being a potential link. Let's get into it. This article that I have here, I wanted to reference. Okay, so the suspect, Bryan Kohberger, could be linked to other unsolved murders. Ex-FBI agent Jennifer Koffendorfer states, very plausible that the murder of the 4 students wasn't committed by a first-time offender. She goes on to say, I do think it would be rare that he would try to commit 4 murders and maybe possibly even was thinking about committing 6. She said nothing that 2 roommates in the house survived the attack that night. If this was his first time to kill 4 people, that would be very unusual in the trends of a fledgling serial killer. And then the police commented, asked about Kohberger's possible ties to unsolved crimes. Moscow Police Captain Anthony Dahlinger told Newsweek, what I can tell you is that investigators continue to look into all avenues in this case. Now, this article here, Idaho 4 marks 3rd fatal stabbing having uncanny similarities. The Moscow Police Department, no official connection has been made at this time, and that was a while back. So all of these cases remain unsolved, aside from suspect Kohberger being arrested for the Idaho 4. On June 13th, 2020, Sandra Ladd, L-A-D-D, 71, was a resident of Washougal, Washington, and a former school secretary who was found deceased at approximately 4:30 p.m. while at home in 2020 with knife wounds, not immediately obvious when Ladd died. The medical examiner discovered and noted many stab wounds were directly located in her torso area, leading the declaration of death to be a homicide. She was a loving mother to 4 children. She's described as having a big heart and taking care of people up and above herself. She sounds like a blessing to those closest to her. I wish them the best. She does have vegan ties, frequent, and I think there's one picture that shows she was attending a vegan orchard. So in terms of Bryan, this would make sense as she's a vulnerable, alone. This is less risky if it were to be a first attempt. Speaking from his logic. Okay. So this is the first case that's potentially linked. Sandra Ladd. And then we get to 8/13/21. Travis Juetten, 26, Jamie Juetten, 26, were attacked in their home as they slept around approximately 3 a.m. by a masked burglar whom was wielding a knife in rural County, Oregon. According to a GoFundMe page, the day they were to leave on their vacation, tragedy struck Jamilyn and Travis. Around 3 a.m., they were awoken from their sleep by someone attacking them with a knife. In the ensuing struggle, Travis gave his life to save Jamilyn. She was later transported to the hospital with multiple stab wounds, where doctors were able to operate, stabilize, and have started her rehabilitation surgery. Jamilyn managed to survive despite being knifed 19 times. It was at the hospital that she learned that her husband had died. Travis was 26 years old. The case remains unsolved. So that's the second case. These two incidents, which we just discussed, the Juettens and the Ladd, took place approximately 14 months span apart and across a 70-mile radius, albeit different states, much like the case here with the Idaho Force. So in these two cases, it was Sandra Ladd was in Washington and the Juettens were from Oregon. So in the Idaho case, we have Bryan Kohberger from Washington going over to Idaho. So I mean, these two would share the similarity of crossing state lines. These locations are about a 5-hour trip west from Moscow in Pullman, Washington. Okay. So what are my key notes and takeaways? If you were to think that the knifings, you go from one victim who's a little bit more vulnerable to then two victims, they're also younger, and there's two. So going from someone that's older at 70 to two, it's more risky going to two, and they're younger. So is he stepping up that high? And then you got the Idaho 4, which I mean, you could say there's a pattern there, but I'm not going to buy that. It could be him getting bolder, more risky. Sandra, 71, she had stab wounds in her torso. She is vegan. No motive, or it was not considered to be a burglary. In the Juetten case, the survivor had 19 wounds, multiple to her face. This one was a noted burglary, which Bryan does have a charge of. They both two have appeared between 3 and 4 a.m. Entry event focused. Flipping states if connected. Interesting thought, but I think that's just a coincidence in my opinion. Further, difference in stabbing, wound attack, force, focus, torso versus face. First case you have focus on the abdomen, and then the second one you have face, which to me is more rage and personal. One is characterized as burglary. Not saying what that means. I'm not going to get that in depth. To me, these are not Bryan. Number one, the dates. Yes, also on the 13th of the respective month, 6/13/20 and 8/13/21, but both take place approximately 12 months before Bryan would have been reasonably been expected to move in from cross-country home in Pennsylvania. Besides, he was active in and graduated from DeSales University with his master's in May of 22, which is back in Pennsylvania. This would then entail him traveling back and forth for each occurrence, all before then picking up and then moving to Washington, which borders Idaho, to then kill 4 in their 20s undergraduates 10 miles away. Now, in my opinion, not to be suggesting how you come to your own, merely sharing thoughts, I don't believe that Kohberger is connected to either of these events whatsoever. Bryan did not move to the Washington State campus area until approximately May or June of 2022, from what we understand. Also, on the affidavit, we see that his 8458 phone was subscribed, so he activated a new phone plan on June 23rd, 2022. And that was back in Washington, still at his home. So he had not yet moved to Pennsylvania, so he had not yet moved to Washington quite yet. And that was June 23rd. Further, in regards to the other cases I have recently seen potentially linked, the Georgia case struck me, given its details / brutality. However, with consideration and intention to stay within the context of Kohberger, I will not go into depth on that case. Simply put, as soon as I saw the FAT carvings done into the victim in that case, I lost interest in terms of it being connected to Kohberger, which is what I want to focus on here. Number one, it took place in Georgia. Number two, the carving to me would appear to be like some sort of signature, indicating that in order to be Bryan, there would be vastly differing MOs and mens rea involved here. Now, in comparison with any of the 3 stabbing cases discussed in the latter, I also don't believe it appears to be connected to any of those either. The motive and signature related details, in my opinion, signal separate or a different type of predator. I don't know. Share your thoughts. So, in my opinion, I don't believe any of those are linked to Bryan, but do still believe it is probable that this was not Bryan's first rodeo. But what was his first? Now, there was one potential link. I believe I saw it on TikTok, but can't find it again. If anyone knows what I'm talking about or has a link and info on the incident, send it my way, please. I'd love to look at it. Haven't had the time to dig deeper into it, but simply... So this case I was talking about, I found on TikTok. I haven't had the chance to dig too far into it, but it involves an unsolved shooting incident that took place not too far from his parents' residential home, where he was arrested. I realize the use of a gun is a big jump or a shift in mode of violence, but this took place approximately 5 to 7 years ago, I want to say. Could he have wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone? He would have been in his teens, not taking too big of a risk, shooting someone solo from a distance as a stranger in a secluded area. Why? Just because? This would make it difficult to solve. He would have known that. It would make his research question posed that much more intriguing. So what I'm saying is, could he have potentially pulled off an event like that, make it look like a hunting incident, just so he could know what it felt like to kill somebody? I don't know. I think his mindset is much more like that of Elliot Rodgers. However, not incel per se, as he does take his own life. Elliot Rodgers, that is. Incels tend to be more rash with violence, spreeing than unaliving oneself. These types are usually hell-bent on a day of retribution and then just haul off on a tyrant frenzy before then kicking the can. Bryan stalked, studied, like a predator to prey. I believe to Bryan was Xana and Maddie meeting them at the Mag Greek. They were his type. They were both pretty, petite, college-age girls just blossoming into women. I believe he is fixated on a particular image, much like a lot of these sick killers do. Now, further considering Bryan's fixation, take a look at this clip, Elliot Rodger, wherein he expresses his rage and hatred towards the women he could not have.
I'm going to show you all a short little tour of this college town called Isla Vista. And through this place, I am overcome with rage. Beautiful girls walking around here. Those are the kind of guys that girls like, instead of magnificent gentlemen like myself. A house party. Beautiful girls talking with their frat boys. I hate them all.
Now, onto the fraternity, sorority potentially being a piece of Bryan Kohberger's master plan. Let us first remember the psyche at play. I believe the suspect in this case is a cold-blooded killer, one by nature whom is manipulative and egocentric, emotionally detached, lacking the ability to experience natural compassion and empathy with other people. All stalking begins with fantasy, which then turns obsessive, essentially becomes an uncontrollable desire. He was not only after the victims, but he was also seeking to redeem his sense of self, his strong need for control and power. He's one who interprets rejection as a big blow to his ego, then lashes out to save face. There are stalkers everywhere. In fact, 1 in 12 American women will be stalked in her lifetime. with only 2% of those ending in death. There was a study done on psychopaths to determine what makes them different. They mapped brain emotions, and they discovered that their brains don't tend to develop emotional attachment or develop significant relationships. If you ask them what it feels like to be in love, a psychopath would say, it feels like having good sex. In the affidavit, when Dylan states that she hears, "Please don't hurt me," when she came to her door for the third time, I believe. A psychopath understands what this person is conveying. However, his reaction isn't a derivative of a place that responds with strong emotions. He's more flat, even keel heart rate, regardless. One guy put, further, they understand the book meaning of the words, but they don't understand the deeper emotional significance of the words. That is, they know the words, but not the music. They're emotionally flat. He had 2 beautiful sisters. One was in a stalker film, wherein the premise showed that they were killed by a serial killer. Did he experience, growing up with them, the thrill of that? Did he see how that made them feel? Is that what he's trying to capture? I'm sure his sister didn't have problem getting boyfriends. They're both gorgeous. Makes you wonder. Wanted to be an Army Ranger. He applied to intern and fall at Moscow PD. BTK did this as well as a home security officer. He used it to further enhance his ability to study his victims. Was Bryan attempting to get inside to better fine-tune his craft? Now, if you recall the buzz online suggesting that the killer, before we knew who the suspect was, had potential involvement with a fraternity, followed up then with this podcast stream leaked, which appears to sound like Bryan.
I live in a college town, and I've worked with probably at least 10 Sigma Chi members, and the one thing that every single one of them I feel like has asked me is, if you were going to kill somebody, how would you get away with it?
All right, from the affidavit, we know that Xana was found deceased, which appeared to have been caused by an edged weapon. Also in the room was a male, later identified as Ethan Chapin, deceased with wounds later determined, and this is part I think is interesting, later determined autopsy report provided by Spokane to be caused by sharp force injuries, which is different than Xana, which was edged weapon, and then the other 2 girls upstairs, Kaylee and Maddie, it says they were found together in a single bed with stab wounds. So all 3 of them are different, but this one particularly, and if you look at it's prioritized in the affidavit, okay? And this is the part they redact, okay? They redact the entire thing. Now, with that said, I want to say much respect to Ethan's family. I'm not trying to get, too dark or anything like that, but it's something to point out. It is redacted from the affidavit. Sharp force, which is different. None of the other girls' autopsies are included. His is, okay? So there's a reason why, to show some type of, I don't know, but it's definitely different. Sharp force, okay? And then we remember at 4:17 a.m., there was a whimper and then a loud thud heard at 4:17 a.m., which a whimper 50 feet away is probably a scream. I believe he had the intention to kill Xana and Maddie. He did not know that Ethan nor Kaylee Gonsalves would be there. In fact, in the PCA, they make it a point to emphasize that BF stated that EC was a guest. Hence, I think he went in there with 2 victims in mind, which, given the circumstances, led to what it did. Ethan was an immediate threat, like Elliot Rodger, probably had a lot of hate towards the other guy being in bed with a female. Thus, sharp force wounds. BTK's first murder in 1974 was attempted to be 2 victims, a wife and a kid. Ended up being 2 kids and also an adult male. 4 victims, much like Bryan. I don't think he anticipated walking out of there with 4, but he did what he thought needed to be done at the time. Now, I'm on the fence as to whether or not he actually saw Dylan. Her statement says bushy eyebrows. My first thought is that he is starting to have that internal "I got to get out of here now" alarm go off. He was fixated on his mission and goal, most likely overflowing with adrenaline and psychological high. He probably had tunnel vision, only focusing on what was his exit and to get the hell out of there. Dylan did not state anything about his eyes. Okay? Nothing about his eyes. I would think that if they did make eye contact, by nature, we are known to latch onto eye contact. Yes, it is dark, however, without the description regarding anything to do with the eyes makes me think they did not make eye contact. Hence, bushy eyebrows likely comes from a side profile view. They were bushy, likely to stick out of a mask per se. I don't know. With that said, you will not hear me discuss anything in regards to her being anything other than a victim in this case. If you start to consider such, please take a step back and really think about what this young lady endured. I feel for her. It's way too easy to look back now, given the facts and results of everything we know, to sit back and play Monday morning quarterback. If she had been drinking, maybe toked a little Mary Jane, or who knows, who cares? Whatever it may be, it's ridiculous. She was responsible. She had herself at home and in bed sleeping. What more can she do? She was awoken, and you know the rest. It was dark, and at the same time, she may have perceived it as some weird creepy dude. There's no way she understood the wrath as to what just took place. Locks her door and passes out. Why can't this make sense? I know the defense will have a field day with it, but damn, I pray strength for that girl to persevere, truly. Now, after the murders, we look at his routes and see we can detail his phone and activity of his white launcher being consistent with one another, even going so far as to drive such a distance south, as you see in these pictures, then west, before heading back north up to Pullman after committing the acts. Heck, even earlier in the day, on 11/12, he was witnessed 45 minutes away having coffee at Kate's Cup, and then at a grocery. Then to be back at the crime scene area the morning after, from 9:12 to 9:21 in the King Road residence neighborhood. I guess that does favor him being willing to drive a distance, much like his cross-country track home for the holidays, but I don't see him being connected to the other cases presented. But with that thought brought up about Ethan, it makes me wonder. I don't think Bryan went in there with that idea, but I think after the fact, what had happened, seeing the chatter online, we know he was involved in the chatter. He saw the steam and the rumors of the frat house. Maybe he liked that idea and then took it upon himself to call in to try to sell it even more so. I do believe he attacked those girls because of their status and what they achieved as young women. But as far as trying to spin it on Frat and Ethan, I think that's something he learned through his research, other people suggesting. But let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe. I will be putting a body cam / caught taking out trash to neighbor / visual snow contemplation together here within coming days. I didn't add it here because I believe it was 11 years ago. A lot of things that can change. I mean, he went on to be successful, undergraduate, master's degree, and it started a PhD all after that. So I don't know how that's going to be relevant in court, but we'll see. But I'll put that together here within the coming days. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.